Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Sales and Marketing Alignment, a Realistic Goal or a Pipe Dream. The goal of this 45-minute session is to unpack this very popular topic, marketing and sales alignment, and the agenda is as follows. We will start with creating a common understanding of what CX is and the importance of sales and marketing collaboration. We will then unveil what are the common misalignment areas and what is the potential cost of business. Then, to close the loop on this conversation, we will be sharing ideas to build the winning formula for sales and marketing alignment. At last but not least, we would like for you in the audience to enrich this conversation by participating in the live Q&A. Simply enter your question in the chat box in your panel, and we will be taking some time at the end to answer them. I am Belén Rodriguez-Opperman, Marketing Specialist for SugarCRM, and joining me today, I have two fantastic panelists with different backgrounds and expertise. The idea is to supplement the concepts with two different perspectives and to showcase a framework of what is working and what is not. I am delighted to introduce you to our invited speaker, Adrian Svinsko, best-selling author and CX consultant. Adrian, good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Belén. It's an absolute delight to be here with you, and looking forward to having a bit of a rummage around some of these kind of issues that we've highlighted today.
Amazing. And also with us, we have Scott Addington, VP Marketing for EMEA, from our team, SugarCRM. Good morning, Scott.
Morning, Belén. Morning, Adrian, and everyone on the line. Again, yeah, I'm delighted to be able to share insight and some thoughts about some of these issues that are still hanging about in our industry. So can't wait to hear what Adrian's got to say. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Perfect. Before we kick this off, let's take one more minute to run through a few housekeeping items as usual. All participants are muted, but I remind you that you are welcome to send your questions in the chat. We will take time at the end to answer as many as we can. If the time is not sufficient to answer to your question, we will contact you in a timely manner with a direct response. In addition, the recording as well as the presentation will be made available for you in the next couple of days. I'll be handing over the spotlight to Scott now, and I'll be coming back for the Q&A. Scott, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Belén. And again, just want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody to the call, and again for Adrian for joining us today to share his wisdom and his knowledge. The first section is going to be talking about all about customer experience. Okay, and this is bang in Adrian's wheelhouse. So I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Adrian for the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, and just sit back and listen to his insight and to his experience. So over to you, Adrian. Let's crack it on.
Well, thanks very much, Scott. And again, thank you to yourself and Belén and everybody at Sugar for inviting me to get involved with this and share a few ideas and a few thoughts. Also, thank you to all the people that are in attendance who's listening in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on my webcam, and so I could just concentrate on talking for the next kind of few minutes, because what I want to do is I want to talk about customer experience, and just I think we should, before we start talking about sales, marketing, collaboration and all these other sort of things, I think we need to kind of start with some context. So if we can move to the next slide, kind of please. I think what we need to kind of what I think our starting point is that we need to agree the importance of customer experience has been established. I think that argument has been won. I think if you don't get that, then you need to catch up, because I think it has been won, and it's the dimension upon which most companies say they're now competing, regardless of whether you're in a business to consumer space or you're in a business to business sort of space. But here's the thing, is that I actually kind of think my research shows that there are a number of things that the companies leading their fields in this kind of do kind of well. Now, I'm not here, I don't want to go through all 12 of them. We don't have time for me to go through all 12 of them. But I'm going to focus on 3 that are the most relevant, I believe, here to some of the issues that we're talking about. But if you're interested in seeing the whole list of 12, then get in touch with myself or Scott or Belén or the team at Sugar, and we'd be happy to furnish you with a complete list. Anyway, so back to business. The three most important ones, I think, that the leaders and the people that lead their fields on experience are, I think the first one that's the most relevant, and it's the top of the list, is that leaders are very clear on their experience, vision, and strategy and how it connects to business objectives. Now, the reason many people say, "Oh, yeah, that's us. We've done that," and we're like, "Actually, no," because too often do I hear from companies that have these grandiose kind of CX strategy statements and plans, but are still frustrated with the results that they get. Because when you can ask them, when you drill into some of this and ask a series of questions like, "What is your experience strategy and why is it that? What is the tech and human touch balance? What is your experience now and how would you like to develop it over time? How will it change for different types of customers? Will it change depending on the stage of the journey? And how does that support the overall achievement of your business objectives?" When I ask those questions, too few companies are able to answer them. What that tells me that their understanding of what they want to do and what they want to achieve is only at a surface sort of level. But what is guaranteed by not being able to answer those questions is that it's a key driver of misalignment between teams. These questions consider customer experience as a whole and probe how different teams need to work together to achieve an agreed vision. So I think that's number one, that we need to put a stake in the ground and say, we need to have a clear and agreed vision. Now, the second thing that I think is really important that the leading companies do is they make things simple, and as simple as possible, both inside and out. They know then that simplicity pays, and actually that's supported by research. You know, Siegel and Gale have this website. They're big global agencies. They have this website called the simplicityindex.com. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. And they've been tracking the impact of simplicity-driven brands since 2009. And they've found that in an increasingly complex world, simplicity stands out when it comes to customer choice, service, and experience. Here's some of the research findings that they've got. They found that 64% of customers will pay more for simpler experiences. 61% of customers are more likely to recommend a brand because it's simple. They also put together the top brands that they've identified as being simplicity-driven brands, and those brands have outperformed the stock market, their major stock indices, by north of 300% over the course of the last few years. But it's not only just external metrics that matter. They've also kind of found that 62% of employees at simple companies are also brand champions, because employees appreciate a simple employee experience, and that's compared to only 20% of employees at complex companies. So the reduction of choice and the quest for simplicity has value not just for customers and employees too. It's an easy thing to say, but it's a hard thing to deliver. But there is value and reward on that route, and I think that's a key thing that we need to think about when we're trying to achieve alignment between teams. Because actually, if we don't work to think about how we work together and make it as simple as possible, then it just causes kind of friction. And the third thing related to that leading companies do is that relentless at the identification of and removal of what I call grit. And what I mean is that there's little things like little bits of grit or pebbles or stones that you get in your shoe sometimes, which you notice and it's just really uncomfortable. Now, it might not necessarily be painful enough to make you stop, but you notice it. And that's the key thing, is that we notice it and we remember it. And it's the same thing happens, whether it's employee experience or customer experience. We often overlook some of the small things as being trivial and inconsequential and concentrate on some of the big initiatives. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that actually the little things matter, and they matter a lot. And so if we don't get into a habit of identifying or relentlessly identifying and removing these bits of grit in our experience, both inside and outside, we have to build this culture of continuous improvement. Then that will drive that simplicity, which also kind of allow us to kind of track forward to achieve our vision. Then we're not going to make that much kind of progress. Now, if we think about this kind of like holistically, we step back a little bit and we go to the next slide. I think it's useful to think about it as thinking about alignment and how that works in practice, I think it's useful to think about sports. And when we think about sports, I think it's useful to think about the example of a Olympics 4x100 meter relay competition, and how actually successful different countries how successful different countries have been. Because actually the reality of all of that is it's not always the teams with the fastest runners that win. The team that often wins is the one that gets the baton around the quickest and the most efficiently. Most people kind of forget that, but actually that's the key point in this. And in order to do that, it requires an agreed vision, respect for the different roles that each team member plays, focus on individual performance, but also working very, very hard on the handovers. Now, if you think about that and you flip it into an organizational context, if we move to the next slide, I mean, I will tell you a story about a friend of mine, James. He's a big data and improvement guy, and he's worked for a whole bunch of large organizations. And over his career, and his research and his experience has told him that more than 90% of all the problems that happen across service and experience happens in the gaps between teams, i.e., when you pass the baton on to the next person in the journey or your colleague or whatever. That, ladies and gentlemen, is misalignment kind of right there. So if we move to the next slide. So it seems to me that the problem with this whole misalignment between sales and marketing is a problem that is hiding in plain sight. It's a bit like this. Let me kind of show you an example. If you've ever been one of these, management development or communication type workshops where somebody has had a beach ball, a multicolored beach ball, and they've stood in the center of the room, and you've all stood around looking at the beach ball, and the person, if you're facilitating the workshops, has asked you to describe the beach ball. And what you'll find is that because you'll get, say there's 15 people in the room, you'll get 15 different answers because it's all dependent on your perspective. The same thing I think happens in organizations. Because if you ask different people in different departments what, say, customer centricity means, or what a great service or experience means or looks like, or something else like, say, personalization, data, privacy, inclusion, all these different things, then you're very, very likely to get very different answers. And different answers equals misalignment. And so I think that's the problem hiding in plain sight, is that we actually haven't agreed what we're here to do, what we want to achieve collectively, and how are we going to do it together. And I think that's absolutely clear. People tell themselves that that they have all this in place, but Scott's going to tell you some stuff about which it was going to prove you completely wrong. So make no assumptions that you have alignment, because you don't. And if you think you do, you need to revisit it. So Scott, that's kind of me setting the scene. I hope that's kind of brilliant. Like that shook you up a little bit.
Well, no, there was an awful lot of insight there. So thank you for that. You've just thrown us loads of chunks there. And what I will say is, as a big track and field fan, I love the relay analogy. I think that was excellent, and allowed me at least to visualize, and just you see it time and time again when you watch the Olympics and or other competitions where people drop the baton, and I think it's a great analogy. So that was excellent. But you know what, from what you've said there, I mean, it just seems like we, the industry, have been talking about sales and marketing alignment or misalignment for years, right? And with all this talk, with all the chat, with all the talk, with all the presentations, with everything, you would have thought by now we'd have fixed it. So I guess the big rhetorical question we need to ask ourselves as an industry is there really still a problem, right? And this is a question that we asked ourselves in Sugar a while back, and we have done a small survey. And if we go to the next slide, Belen, you can see that if the results of our survey are to be believed, the answer to that rhetorical question is still a big fat yes. There is a problem. So out of the sales and marketing leaders we spoke to, only 33% thought that their respective teams were well aligned. 1 in 3, 33%. That surprised me. I'll be honest, it surprised me. But Adrian, I'd like I'll just get your initial thought on that. What do you think?
I mean, Scott, I'm shocked kind of by that. And it's like what I was saying before, and I was alluding to before, is that this is some of the data that I know that you've collected, and it should shock people out of their apathy. They're sort of like, everybody should be looking at it and going, I need to review it, because if you flip that number around, what it actually kind of says is that 2/3 of all sales and marketing leaders think that the teams are not aligned. 2/3.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. So it's a bit like there's work to be done. People need to go back and start talking to each other.
Yeah. I mean, 66 out of 100. It's a big number. It's a big number. And if we slip over to the next slide, got something else for you here, because it seems to be us marketeers are a little bit more grumpy about the current situation. Only 2%, and I'll repeat that, only 2% of those that we asked admitted that they think their team is well aligned, perfectly aligned with sales. And they were telling us that they felt that the root cause of this misalignment is a mismatch when it comes to goal settings and incentivization. So when you see, Adrian, when you see this 2% figure, what are you, apart when you get up off the floor after you've fallen off the chair, what are you thinking?
Sorry, I've just lifted my chin up off the table and put a plaster on it. And it kind of fell quite rapidly. I mean, 2%, blimey. I mean, I would kind of suggest, the thing that apart from the number being shocking, the thing that I'm thinking about is that, well, if you know that, and if you know that goal setting and incentivization are the things that get in the way, well, why aren't you talking to people about it?
Yeah.
In order to achieve better alignment? I mean, it's a bit like, somebody's going to, you're just getting you're just sitting there and taking it, and sitting there feeling slightly grumpy about it, or very grumpy about it. And I just think that just feels slightly rubbish.
Indeed, it does seem a bit of a strange situation, but I was interested in the mismatched goal settings, right? So
yes.
if we go to the next slide, Belen, so what we've done is I want to just take a minute or two to look at, the typical kind of sales and marketing teams and what they like to measure themselves against, right? So, if you look at the marketing guys, often there tends to be a heavy slant towards counting the numbers of leads and MQLs, as well as, they love to get down into the weeds on cost per click and cost per opportunity and web traffic and landing page conversions and web page bounces and all that kind of stuff. And, maybe there's more emphasis on those kind of metrics and more that kind of activity than that may be pipeline, although there are obviously many marketing departments that are focused on pipeline. Whereas the sales and BDRs, they're about the number of calls, the quality conversations, how many appointments or demos they've been setting and attended, how much pipeline's been generated, how much booked business they've done, how many sales they've managed to get across the line. So, as you can see from these just quick lists, the focus seems to be really quite different. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this, and it feels like different teams playing different games, right? Yeah. Now all these different sort of like ways of measurement are fine when you're looking at your own activity. But maybe we should move to the next kind of slide. Now, that's fine because people have a responsibility to deliver on their own and to measure things that are relevant to their own kind of area. But what I'm not seeing there is actually where the overlap is. And so I don't think they're intentionally working against each other. It's just how the system is sort of set up. And they have obviously have a different understanding of what they're trying to achieve, or what the outcomes that they're trying to achieve are. So everybody's working for themselves. They think they're aligned, but they're sort of not, I think, because they've got their head down, working away. And so I think until you find those variations and deviations of understanding, those departments are always going to be probably working away to their, in their best efforts, but possibly not all pointing in the right direction or in the same direction.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's a really interesting one. So if we go to the next one, next slide, then. Misalignment of goals, as we've just discussed, it's a big issue. It's a big issue, but it is just one kind of piece of the puzzle, right? And in the short time that we've got left, I want to take a look at some of the other examples of sales and marketing challenges. So if we go to the next slide, because I've got some cheeky data points here, as well as our own survey. There's loads of research that's been done over the years by various organisations and companies that point, that kind of reinforce the point and reinforce the lack of sales and marketing alignment. But here are a couple of my favourites, and again, Adrian, I'd love to get your reaction to these. So a recent study by the Task Group has discovered that on average, sales reps ignore 50% of marketing leads. Now, let me tell you, just between you and me, if I found that my BDR or sales team were ignoring half the leads that we were sending over to them, I'll be having words. I'll be honest with you. What say you, Adrian?
I mean, I'm completely with you, Scott. I mean, I'm a bit like, wow. I mean, if you think about it from both sides, right? If you think about it if you look at the marketing department and they're like, and they find out that sales are ignoring 50% of your leads, you're going to look at it and go, well, how would you feel about that? And then you think about sales getting all these leads and having to sift through them and then going and only being able to make 50% of them work. You look at it and go, well, that's just dysfunctional. You're like, why aren't they talking to each other about what a good lead looks like? And why isn't marketing talking to sales about what they're looking for? And do they have an agreed way of working together? It just feels all a little bit, we're just kind of like doing our bit and then chucking it over the fence and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and it goes down to the basics, doesn't it, a little bit, and it seems again like a classic case of a communication breakdown. But anyway,
there's a song in there somewhere.
maybe. But the next stat, is equally concerning. To be fair, according to the chaps at Marketing Sherpa, only 56% of B2B companies check valid leads before passing them over to sales. That means 44 companies out of 100 are just chucking any old lead over the fence to sales without anyone checking to see if they're a good fit, if they're a valid prospect, if they're ready to talk to the company. That beggars belief, quite frankly. But again, get your 2 pence on that.
Scott, I think the thing that I mean, again, it's another shocking statistic. I'm just like, wow, really? I mean, there's 2 things that occurs to me there. Is that one, from both these statistics, is a bit like there's a whole heap of wasted time, wasted effort, all of those sort of things. And then the other thing is like there's also feels like there's a lack of care as well. It's like, why would you accept all that? Why would you kind of pass things on without checking them? Why would you, put up with somebody ignoring 50% of the leads that you've kind of created? That just feels so. There's a lack of care, and then also kind of a whole heap of waste thrown in there, which I find fascinating.
It's fascinating, depressing. It's more like it.
I wouldn't use a bit more choice language.
but as you said, I think you said it a few minutes ago, right? That it looks like we've got 2 teams playing different games, right? But my big question to you, right, is why? Fundamentally, why? Why do you think this is happening? Where's it all going wrong?
Well, I think it comes down to that sort of thing. I think people believe that they're playing the same game, but actually, when you kind of like when you throw up in the currents, it's a bit like somebody kind of going. I use this example. I think this example. Hopefully, this example is going to work. Like, imagine that there's a big kind of like big new sporting match put on, and it's England versus Scotland. Now, if anybody knows the nature of sporting kind of rivalries, you know, if anybody knows anything about sport, well, the England-Scotland kind of sporting rivalry is quite intense, and it runs across all sorts of different sports. But imagine this: you go England versus Scotland at a big stadium near you coming soon, and on the day, the English rugby team kind of showed up, and then the Scottish football team showed up, and they were slated to play hockey. For me, that's what it feels like. Everybody thinks they know the game that they're playing and what's actually going to happen, but actually, in reality, when you test it, it doesn't, because nobody's actually checked, oh, what game are we playing, and how are we playing it, and do we have the right people, you know, and all those different sort of things. And so I think that's the thing, is that we make assumptions about what we understand without checking our understanding and figuring out the kind of like, you know, are we clear? Are we agreed? Are we working together? Or are we working against each other? Maybe unintentionally, but are we clear about this? And for me, that's the thing. Again, I go back to it's hiding in plain sight. It's that people are making assumptions about something, but the data is showing it's patently wrong.
Yeah, I mean, for the record though, I quite fancy going to that game.
Yeah, no, I think that it'd be harking back to like it's the knockout back in the day.
No, I'd pay good. I think I'd pay good money to see that. That'd be quite good. That'd be quite fun. But we digress. But in all seriousness, right? I think you know, we do need to spend a little bit of time looking at why this is happening. You know, what is going on in organizations, or what is not going on in organizations, that is allowing this kind of disconnect to take place day after day after day. So again, love your insight.
So I think that you're absolutely right, and I think some of these alignment issues have their roots embedded at the very top of an organization. I think it was we've got 3 words on this slide: mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and those are kind of a nod to Daniel Pink's work in his book Drive, where he outlines sort of the 3 main elements of intrinsic motivation that allow professionals to work at a high level of productivity, like the autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So you've got to enable individuals to work well, then you can scale that up, you know, to a team level, to the department level, to a business unit, and then kind of an organization. But I actually think these are some of the clues of what we need to address in order to get that going. Now, I would say that, I mean, because I know that what you're going to ask me, Scott, you're going to like, well, you know, so where do we start with all of this? And I'm like going, I think you have to start with the P bit. You have to start with a purpose and how you're going to go about achieving that, because purpose, I think, is the thing that speaks to alignment. You know, once you know and understand what your kind of purpose is, I think then you're going to be in a much better place to answer some of the more detailed day-to-day questions that arise, like using the analogy we used before, is like, who am I taking the baton from and who am I passing it to? You know, and how does that work and what are they expecting? And do I have an internal CX process? Do I have SLAs maybe, or a framework of understanding that kind of helps guide that? Have you talked to your teammates or your neighboring department about what is it that you're expecting from me, and what can I expect from you, and what does success look like? What does good look like? You know, and how do we take all of that sort of stuff and make it aligned to overall company strategy and goals? And then how do we kind of cascade that down, or kind of drill down into that and go like, well, what are our individual, team, and kind of shared goals that help us kind of make sure that we kind of we're all pointing in the right direction? And then how is that all supported and supplemented with measurement and communication to make sure that we understand if we're on track or not? So in short, I mean, I'll go right back to the beginning and say, I think Daniel Pink has done some great work in Drive and gives us some clues about what we where we need to focus. And I think the first thing to trying to start achieving this is, again, is purpose, because I think purpose speaks to alignment. If we don't get that right, then there's no point thinking about mastery and autonomy. We have to get the purpose bit right first.
No, indeed. I think you're absolutely right. Everything should come from everything should come from the top, really, and then disseminate down. So, I think that's spot on advice. And you know what? This is important stuff, right? Getting this right can make a real tangible difference to any organisation, right? The business case for strong sales and marketing alignment is overwhelming, as we shall see over the next couple of slides, because I've got some more cheeky data points for everyone. There's stacks of stats out there that show that what we're talking about is a good thing, right? LinkedIn a few years ago, they produced some research that suggested that business with strong alignment was 67% more effective at closing deals, 58% more effective at retaining customers, drove 208% more revenue. I mean, those are big numbers, right? And then Forrester, off the back of that, that some of their research suggests that highly aligned organizations grow at 19% faster than others and are 15% more profitable. So, what's not to love about those, Adrian?
I think, I think those numbers are compelling, and the opportunity is clear. However, you'll know this as well as I do, is that you could go into a conference or a room of business leaders, and you can ask them, so how many of you want to be number one in your market and lead your field? And pretty much everybody's hand would go up. You'd actually question kind of why somebody's hand wasn't going up if it didn't go up. If they asked them who wants to be number one. But the thing is like, yes, whilst there's a desire for people to be able to want to achieve that, we also know that some people wait for it to happen, but some people go out and seek it. And it's only those organizations that are going out and seeking it. And what I mean by that is that they're willing to put in the effort and the hard work that it will take to give themselves the chance of winning. Because have no doubt, if this stuff was easy, then everybody would be doing it. And we wouldn't see research like this. But it's only the ones that are willing to step up and put in the hard work and do the grind, as it were, because some of this stuff is not going to be pretty, and it might take a while, and it'll take some difficult conversations, but those are the ones that are going to succeed. Those are the ones that are going to take the opportunity.
Indeed. I mean, it's, you get out what you put in, right? As with most things in life, I guess. You got to put the work in. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen without putting the time and effort in. But listen, I got one more stat for you, right?
This is your fave, isn't it?
Oh, this is the daddy of all business reasons to get aligning. So, our friends at HubSpot, they are suggesting that misalignment between sales and marketing costs companies at least $1 trillion each year. Now, I didn't know this really, but I had to look up. That's 12 zeros. Okay, that's a really big number. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure how HubSpot came up with that number. I'm not sure how accurate it really is, but it makes a bloody good headline. It allows lots of people, including me, to do a really bad impression of Dr. Evil.
Go on.
I refuse. But ultimately, this it underlines the potential, right? It underlines what's being missed. What could be gained if we got this right, if we just stopped talking like we have done for the last 20 years and actually put in the hard work, as you said, started talking and just started working properly together. There's obviously huge potential here. So if we go to the next slide, Belen, thank you. I think by now, we can all agree that sales and marketing alignment is a good thing to do, right? And we've touched on a couple of the areas where this could be falling down a bit, but now I want to just shift gears a little bit and take a few minutes to look at a couple of ideas, some practical ideas to build the winning formula for sales and marketing alignment. And again, Adrian, again, this is bang in your area, right? So I'm gonna give you the floor, and just let you take us through a few stories and a few ideas that you've got.
Brilliant, thank you, Scott. So, there's a thing where it talks about presentation kind of best practice is that when you start, it's like tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them again. So here's me telling you kind of what I probably already told you, but these are the three foundations I think that are your winning formula towards achieving that alignment and being able to capture that opportunity in front of you. So first of all, I reiterate that you've got to start with an agreed vision of what you're trying to do and why, and how you're going to go about achieving that, and how you're going to going to measure your progress towards achieving that. And I think that let me give you an example of how that works in practice. If we move to the next slide. Now, some of you may know Coventry Building Society, some of you may not. They are a financial services institute in the UK, but they're a great example of an organization that has a brilliant vision and are completely aligned in what they do. So a number of years ago, like many other financial organizations, they'd expanded their portfolio. They'd done a whole bunch of different things, a whole different set of products. But what they did, they ended up refocusing and simplifying their business back on two key foundational areas of where they basically started their business. And that was, they were going to focus on savings and mortgages. When they did that, they got completely aligned on that. Their performance started to really kind of like ramp up. And here's some stats for you. They have a savings growth rate that is twice the market rate and a mortgage growth rate that is 4 times the market rate. They're the most cost-efficient building society in the UK. They have the highest customer satisfaction of any major bank or building society in the UK. They're ranked first for mortgages and savings by Fair Finance. One of the Sunday Times top 100 companies. 92% of their staff say they feel they're proud to work for this organization. But check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Since 2010, they've been continuously developing all that. They've been posting out these figures for the last 10, 15 years. But since 2010, they haven't used sales incentive schemes or sales targets for any individual member of staff. Now, yeah, they might have collective targets or aims, but what they've done is they've got really, really clear, and they focus on working together to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, and all for the customer. Now, what I'm not saying is that we should all follow their example, but what I am saying is it shows what is possible if we all get clear on what our vision is and how we're going to work together to achieve it. And that's just a story about the art of the kind of the possible, as it were. It shows you what's possible out there. But if we move on to the next slide, so we've talked about vision. Now we need to talk about this continuous improvement, this identification of these little bits of grit and keeping kind of going. It's because you cannot improve without feedback, whether that's positive feedback or constructive kind of criticism. But if we go back to a piece of the data that was shared with us earlier about these 50% of leads. Now, that makes me think about, living with my partner, and they make me say a dinner, or even if we go out to dinner, and I eat 50% of my dinner, whether it's my partner's made it or we've gone out to a restaurant and we've kind of ordered some food. Now, if I send back or I don't finish 50% of my dinner, how do you think my partner's going to feel about that they've specially prepared this meal, or that the restaurant or the waiter who's going to come up to me and look at me slightly po-faced and go, you only finished 50% of it, and they ask you, was anything wrong? And you look at them and go, no, it's fine. And then they look at you and go, well, that's rubbish. How would they feel about that? It's a waste of time, energy, and resource. And let's think about this. This is normal. We need to aspire to at least having a normal relationship where we can actually talk about why that to make 50% not okay and actually talk about how do we move that number from 50 to 75 to 80 to 90, whatever. So we have to make sure we're communicating to achieve that continuous improvement, to enable, if you like, for us to finish our dinner, because I guess that's what we really want. We want to have normal relationships. We want to finish our dinner. So on that slightly odd analogy, Scott, I'm going to pass on to you because I know that you're going to bring it home in terms of the simplicity sort of like stuff.
I am, but just for the record, I never leave half my dinner. I finish everything. So just for the record. But listen, yeah, you make a great point about communication. Okay, so we live in a time where we've got access to more communication tools than we quite literally know what to do with. And I think in society in general, there's a tendency to talk a lot about communicate very little. And what do I mean by communication? Well, in this instance, in the B2B sales marketing world, it's about asking the right questions, asking for opinion and for feedback, and getting those opinions, but properly listening and taking out the insight and gleaning the nuggets of wisdom, and then taking that insight to make improvements, right, and to improve processes or to do things better. So, for example, sales can help marketing by giving feedback on lead quality, on which pieces of content are resonating well or not working, on which parts of the overall message is working or not working. Sales have got so much knowledge about the different markets, the different industries that they're working in. They talk to companies and prospects day in, day out. So they know where these companies are struggling to hit their objectives or to service their customers. And that kind of insight you should be trying to suck all that out as much as you can to feed into the marketing machine, product marketing communications. Competitive insight as well. What are the competitors saying in the marketplace? What are they saying about us? How are they presenting to prospects? What kind of content do they use? If you're sat at your desk all the time, you don't get that kind of insight. But the people that are out there, they have that. You just got to talk to them. You just got to ask them the right questions, listen properly, and get that information.
Yeah.
And conversely, marketing can help sales, or marketing can improve the communications there by getting sales involved, right? Getting sales involved in the marketing planning process, getting their opinion on how the plan is progressing. Involve sales in deciding who we're going to target, what industries we're going to go after, how we're going to do that, right? And involve sales in building out what a lead is. What's the definition of a lead? What's the definition of an opportunity? Right? How do we hand that lead over to you? What's the process? And get them brought in and invested. And this last bit, I think, and I've seen this time and time again, right? If you get sales to agree up front on what a definition of a lead is and how a lead will be handed over and progress to an opportunity, etc., etc., you will then, if you're one of those marketeers that is suffering with sales ignoring 50% of your leads, this is how to fix it pretty quickly, right? Because as soon as sales get bought in, they've helped you to define that qualification process. They're going to be much more likely to do proper follow-ups to really get bought in, because they've agreed that this is what a lead is, right? It comes back to that communication.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next slide, Belen, please. Excuse me. Adrian, you talked at the top of this section about simplification, and you've talked about it a number of times. So one of the key ways, I think, to align, to help with that simplification, is to align, the CRM and the marketing automation. These are the tools that each team lives in, day out, and I think it's a key component of the strategy that you've outlined, right? For a number of ways. I think, without getting too into the weeds, because this is not what this webinar is about, but if you are able to integrate your CRM and your marketing automation you can get a unified approach to data management, right? All contact info, all communication info, everything is saved under one roof. It's got to be easier to view, to analyze, to access, to edit, to keep track of, right? Tracking and reporting data, it's got to be more efficient doing it under the same platform. You can track and analyze customer activities, customer behavior. You can even cut off at the pass customers that are showing signs of maybe getting a bit twitchy and maybe looking at other vendors, other competitors. You can reduce your churn just by looking and figuring out and analyzing these behavior patterns. Continuous workflows across the departments, that just instills more accountability between the teams, and you can do all this. You can do all this and more with an integrated CRM and marketing solution. And it just so happens that we have SugarMarket and SugarSell, and it would be remiss of me if I didn't show at least one slide, so forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, of the way that Sugar goes about helping organizations improve sales and marketing alignment. And very quickly, here you can see that both in SugarMarket and in SugarSell, which is the marketing automation and the CRM area of our platform, both marketers and salespeople can access campaign analytics, performance indicators, completely tailored to their own individual requirements and all kind of things. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're not going to go into any kind of detail at all, but just to say, it's way easier to align when both teams have their eyes on the same prize, right? And bringing it all together. And we live in these kind of platforms day in, day out. And so to me, it's obvious that this has got to be a help to get these kind of teams working closer together. So that pretty much wraps up the main section of the webinar. And I'm looking at the time, and we are doing okay, I think. Belen, are we doing all right?
We are doing okay. We are running 1 minute over, but we have received a few good questions. So if it's okay, can we take the time to answer at least one? Yeah?
We can absolutely do that. Of course we can.
Let's do that then. So I'm going to go ahead with the first question. It says, what are the first steps for designing an alignment strategy and who should be involved? Scott, would you like to start answering with that question?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Excuse me. So I think that kind of thing should be. That kind of thing should form almost like a pincer movement. I think absolutely this kind of thing needs to come from the top down. Okay, we've talked a lot about vision. We've talked a lot about purpose on this call. So the senior, and it's down to the senior management, the senior execs to instill that vision and purpose throughout the company. So I would be looking to the senior marketing and the senior salespeople to lead by example, right? Start collaborating and show a desire to get around the table and make this kind of stuff happen. Okay, but the individual teams shouldn't just sit back and wait to be told, right? I think ask the questions, just like we've gone through just now. Ask questions of your peers. Listen to the insight. Listen properly to what the answers are. Gain that insight and put things together. Put forward ideas to improve. Everybody should be empowered to try and improve the situation and make a difference. So I think, yes, it needs to come from the top, but I think there's probably way better ideas from the people doing the job day to day than some of the guys in the top of the organisation that are a little bit removed from the reality. So I think there's absolute value in coming at it from both ends. Adrian, have you got any extra thoughts on it?
I think that's absolutely right. I think you're spot on, Scott. I think that if you wait for, here's the kind of thing. Do you wait for somebody to fix your current situation, or do you actually take an active role in fixing it yourself? And I think that's the thing, is it feels like the research has suggested that many marketeers, well, they're, are, and salespeople are unhappy at the situation, not many people are actually doing anything about it. They're waiting for somebody else to change the situation. And what I'd like to see is both leaders, it's on the sales and marketing side, actively stepping into this and going, are we aligned? Are we not aligned? Are we making assumptions about it? Are we pointing in the same direction? If not, and that's absolutely get on it. But I would say that there's other people that sit in the teams, the operational side of things, that are generating the leads and then following up and qualifying them and all this sort of stuff. So it's like marketing, lead gen, BDR, through to kind of like sales and things. Those people need to be talking to each other. If you find yourself in marketing and you're like going, you need to be going down to sales and ask them, like, are you binning 50% of the leads we're sending you your way? And if so, why are we not talking about this? So I'm thinking about individual responsibility at the top and also kind of all the levels in between, because listen, this is your work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take responsibility for improving it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. All right, that is all the time that we have for today. At this point, before I close this session, I'd like to personally thank you, our distinguished audience, for your attention and time. And then thank our dear speakers for sharing their pearls of wisdom with us today. Adrian, it's been fantastic to have you as an invited speaker today. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Belen. Thank you, Scott.
No problem. Thanks. That was great.
Scott, thank you for taking part of this great session as well.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Belen, for organising. And I hope that everyone on the call, got a couple of takeaways and thoughts. I was making notes as Adrian was speaking off camera there. So, I've got some ideas of how we can improve, and I hope you have too. That's the whole point of these kind of sessions. So, thanks again. Thanks for joining us.
Indeed it is. I wish you all a great rest of your day. Take care and stay well. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Cheers.